Thank you for all being here. Hope you are having fun those 2 days. I'm going to talk to you about the journey that we did at Locala in event sourcing. So just rapidly, what we do at Locala is provide services to retailers for them to increase their business. So it can go through advertising, but also through a lot of insights that we can give them through data. So before starting, you probably all know about this, but yeah, event sourcing. One thing that it means is storing the complete history of a domain as a sequence of events. You probably all know that, but yeah. I think it's quite interesting. And a fun fact is that, well, this goes back to around 3200 to 3000 BC. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm still going to start in 1800 BC, if that's OK with you. Then we had, well, the beginning of ledgers. Ledgers are places where you're going to write a lot of lines, one after the other. It's been used for centuries. You don't lose any information because, well, everything is written. Well, except maybe because of the time that spent and the rock that withers. However, it takes really a lot of time to go through, to read. And obviously, it takes a lot of space, especially if you're carving on rock. And after that, well, time advanced, and we created computers, and thus came the databases and the relational databases. You all know about relational databases, but let's remind ourselves of some of the properties of a relational database. It has mutable lines, so you can modify those lines easily. They are humanly readable. You can read that line and understand everything about it, generally. You can create relationships between those various lines. And you can easily search through them, through some kind of query system. So it makes finding information very easy. However, one thing that you don't have by default, because a lot of people have tried to go around this, is that you don't get a history of everything that happened. You get only that latest state that is shown to you. And however, this takes, well, less much space, because, of course, you don't store a whole history. And well, another interesting fact is that behind all those databases, you actually have a whole log of events that are aggregated inside to these specific lines. It's called a wall, write-ahead log. So yeah, that reminds me of something. Probably does all of you. And so this is the evolution of the storage, the cost storage for computers and everything that revolves around it. And one interesting thing is that if you take a look at 1970 here, well, so when relational databases arrived, we were above $100 per megabyte in terms of storage. That's a lot. And since then, well, you can see that it goes down to, well, nothing, almost. Well, not nothing, but yeah. And so we've divided the cost of storage by around 10,000. So now we actually have a choice. Back then, we created relational databases because storage cost a lot. Now we can actually store much more information. So we can decide to go back to ledgers, aka event sourcing in my case, or, well, keep databases. It really depends on what you're doing here. And as you can guess, well, at Locala, we decided to go with event sourcing when it was relevant. So let's take a look at where we started in 2017. This is when CQRS and event sourcing started coming into our lives. A bit of context here. In 2017, Locala was then called S4M, and had just bought another company from which I come. And this made them acquire a new product, a DSP, okay? So at that point in time, they had those two legacy products, the DSP, which is a demand-side platform. So just to explain a bit, it's a platform that is going to serve advertising through a real-time bidding system. And on the other hand, they had their ad server. And so the operational team behind this, the operational team was like doing something inside the ad server, copy-pasting some code from there, and putting it inside the DSP. And that was quite tedious. So the goal here was to create a single product that would bridge the gap between those two products and help improve the performance of our operational team. So you have the technologies here that we were using, Rails and Postgres for the DSP, and PHP and MySQL for the ad server. So we created Fusio. That was the name back then. Well, it's still the name, actually, to bridge the gap between those two services. And the goal eventually was that Fusio would go much further than this. It would bridge the gap with a lot of services, maybe external services, to integrate ourselves with partners, etc. And all this, we needed it to be geographically distributed, so quite a challenge here. So we needed some kind of glue. And, well, guess what? This is when we started doing event sourcing. Well, let me put quotes around this, because I know it's not exactly a complete event-sourced approach here. But we were doing two things. We were doing, on one hand, command sourcing, and on the other hand, event sourcing. What was happening is that Fusio was writing into a Kafka topic here. So in blue, you have the Kafka topics. So here, we had all the commands that were being stored. Then we had a Kafka stream application here that would read those commands, contain the command handlers, and write them inside an events topic. So this would be our source of truth. And from that point, we had all the events, and we wanted to aggregate these to, let's say, projections, snapshots of the actual object. So this is what these did. Again, Kafka stream applications that would read the events they are interested in, so one per aggregate, actually. And each of them would write in their own Kafka topic. I'm not representing them all here, but there is one Kafka topic per aggregate here. And so this would give us a Kafka topic containing all the events, one after the other, not all the events, sorry, all the aggregation. So you would have some kind of change data capture representation of your object there. So then it was fairly easy to just take this and put it inside a database. Here we were using Apache Geode, which was really great because it provided us with subscription capabilities. So then the main application could just subscribe to the updates here to, well, eventually get the information that had just been written. So you may be asking yourself what motivated us to work with event sourcing. Well, I think one of the first things anyone should do when working on a technological project is wonder about what are the system quality attributes that you're interested in. We wanted something that works long-term. We wanted something that would live maybe 5 or 10 years. We come from a monolithic world where we start building something, and after 3, 4, 5 years, you've probably experienced this, but it becomes harder and harder to maintain because you've added a lot of features to that. So here we wanted to avoid this. And so we defined the system quality attributes that we were interested in. So scalability, availability, maintainability, auditability, partition tolerance, and evolvability, and consistency. See? Question mark. Do you know that theorem that's called the CAP theorem? So it's a theorem that says you cannot have all three of these: consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. You need to choose two between those. So yet again, as it's in our jobs, it's often the case. It's about trade-offs. What do we want to do? And we really needed the availability and partition tolerance. And we learned that, okay, we can't have consistency, but we can have eventual consistency, because event sourcing is eventually consistent. And so this is what we did. Our system quality attributes were all the ones that we needed, and well, eventually consistency came aboard, thanks to, well, event sourcing, but everything that revolves around it, because event sourcing by itself doesn't give you all this, but with the DDD, with the microservices, with CQRS, all this provided us with what we needed to create something that would last in time. This didn't go without challenges. We had quite a few. First, the learning curve. We didn't know anything back then. Like, event sourcing was all new. Our great CTO was telling us, we need to go there. That's the future. So, as usual, I'm saying, yeah, are you sure? And I dig a bit in there, and I ended up convincing myself this time. It's not always the case, but this time I convinced myself that it would be a great path to take. So we took that path, but the learning curve was really hard. There were, to our knowledge, no known framework at that time. We didn't know about Axon, though it existed. No real documentation on the subject. I've chased a lot of people. Like, I even went to a conference in Paris to meet someone who was working with this and doing a lot of conference around this to try and tackle a bit of the issues we were having. There was the context, the context of the company that was also adding some more pressure on this. The complexity of combining two existing products was no small challenge. And the post-merger company context. I don't know how many of you lived through a merger, but it's always quite hard because, well, the teams don't generally see really eye to eye and need some time to adjust themselves. So, yeah. So this was hard, and as you can see, there are a lot of things here, and this was gibberish in the beginning. So yeah. So what did we do? Well, we approached it with pragmatism, and we tried to keep things as simple as possible, and it worked, and still does. You got a couple numbers here of what is inside our stores. So yeah, we're kind of proud to say that on this particular part of the application, we barely had any issues. And we were able to recover when we had problems. So now I think some of you are probably wondering, okay, you showed us this, but did you do anything related to handling side effects, or are you validating your commands, for instance? Well, I must say no, we didn't go that far. We didn't do any side effects handling, so we kept things simple. And there is a very good reason why we did not do this. Because life happened. As usual in companies, when you take time to do things change, strategy change. Actually, what happened here was really, really interesting. We had this product that was in production, so it was working. We had already clients on it. And, well, clients were using this in some unexpected way. Our tool was used in an unexpected way, in an interesting way. Interesting enough that the company decided to change its strategy around it. And so this is when we started thinking about a new product. And this brings us to 2020. When COVID was hitting us quite hard, it gave us the time to start working on a new product. And this time we had much more up our sleeves. We started building Locala. We were in a transformed company. It's been 3 years since the merger, so most problems, let's say, regarding the merger were resolved. We were working on a new product. That new product provided us with, let's say, a clean slate, so no more legacy to handle here. And, well, meanwhile, we learned about a great other product that had been built, Axon, framework and server. And that came with a great Axonic support that was providing us with, well, all the knowledge that we were trying to acquire difficultly. And so, well, from the event sourcing, and thanks to Axon Framework and Axon Server Enterprise, we were able to focus more on the business and less on technicalities. The event sourcing was made much easier thanks to Axon Framework. So some of you, I understand, in this room have never worked with it. I did a small poll before to get to know who was working with Axon and who wasn't. It's interesting that only a third of you people here are currently working on a daily basis with it. And so, well, we got annotation-based integration with, within Spring with Axon Framework. We could easily define command handlers, event handlers, query handlers, and we had process managers to, well, help us handle our side effects. So all this was already done for us. And on the Axon Server Enterprise side, we had the whole infrastructure part that was, well, not the whole part, but most of it that was already sold for us. So the event storage inside multiple contexts, the communication with command routing and events that are forwarded and distributed to all your event handlers, the ability to easily scale the tracking processors, the clustering, of course, and professional support that came with it, and what was invaluable for us. But Axon was only part of the puzzle. We couldn't have done this without changing a bit our organization too. So this is a bit of the change, some of the changes that happened, some of the main changes that helped us. In 2017, we were working with a Scrum approach, doing sprints. And in 2020, we have moved to the shape-up method. I'm putting quotes around this because we're not using exactly the shape-up method, but yeah, I'll let you read about it if you're interested in it. At that point in time also, in 2017, we didn't have any shared vision because all the teams were siloed yet. We were in that post-merger part, so it made sharing things quite hard. And we moved to project-related teams. So the teams would revolve around a project. We would bring together the various people from the various teams to work on a specific project. We didn't have any real quality guidelines, so we decided to define new quality standards. And we had, well, the specification of the work we were trying to do had been written like 6 months ago by the whole product team. So we had this whole list of specification, and we couldn't diverge from it in 2017. And in 2020, we went to an objective-led delivery. So we had an objective, and the teams would decide how is best to achieve that objective together, and not just one person from above. And finally, one thing that was quite important also for us is that in 2017, the design of the application was led by the product team. And in 2020, we had created, well, actually, it happened in 2018. We created a new design team that led the whole design part, and that was invaluable, again, in making sure we had a proper user experience. So how did this go? Let's take a look at where we're at now in 2022. So Locala has been in production for now 5 months. We've generated, we've written about 70,000 events. We have 6 Axon-backed applications that are running. We have 5 subdomains across 3 Axon contexts, about 100 event classes, 92 command classes, 39 query classes, so not yet too big, let's say, but starts growing. And we use 3 primary Axon server nodes on a single region for now. All this is backed up. We do the Axon server data backup every 3 hours, and we do a PITR, so point-in-time recovery backup for our projection twice a day. And again, this didn't go without challenges. Steep learning curve. See? Still there. It's one of the things that, of course, was lessened because we had a huge help from the Axon X support, and we had the tools that were there and that we just had to, let's say, to understand. But still, you have to adapt your mindset, really, when you get on this kind of project. It's a change of mindset, and it's not easy when you come from the monolithic approach, when you've always worked on with the MVC and with REST. It's quite hard to wrap your head around this new approach, which is CQRS and event sourcing, etc., and understand every little thing that is in there, because there are a lot of things. So there is still a steep learning curve today, and I think that's one of the things. If I had to give an advice to the Axonic team, I would say work on that learning part. I just learned about that platform for devs yesterday, and I was like, okay, how do I don't know about this? Like, it can save lives. So yeah. Work on that, because that's the hardest part. Like, we have new members coming in, and the ramping up takes months really to be very effective, and it means that I need to be behind every commit, not every commit, but every feature, to make sure that we're not breaking something, because if you break something, well, it can be really hard to recover from. And this leads me to the domain event models evolution. That's also quite the challenge, because, well, remind yourself that once you've written an event, well, you have now a new option since yesterday, but once you've written an event, you cannot really change it. You shouldn't be changing it, okay? Except in extreme circumstances, okay? So, and this can happen really fast. Like, if you made a mistake, like at some point you decided to put too much information in your event, it means too much things at the same time, or you put too few. You're not able to react properly to that event because you're missing some information in it. Or at some point, maybe you misnamed it. You didn't use the proper name, or you didn't use the proper name for a property in it. This all can lead you to situations where things become a maintenance hell, because the event doesn't have the meaning it's supposed to have. It doesn't carry what it's supposed to carry. And at that point, okay, how do I bridge the gap between what I did and what I want to do? So, yeah, it's really important to properly design your domain event models beforehand. And this leads me to the third part here, taking the time to do the things the proper way. And this is actually quite the challenge too, because, well, when you're working on something, you always have someone telling you, okay, how are you advancing? Even if he's nice, even if he's not, you have this pressure that you put on yourself, that you want to advance fast. And we all react differently to this. And I know some people that need to rush inside the code, and that's not the way to do this. If you rush inside the code, you're going to do mistakes, and you're going to pay the price later on. And so what you think you've gained in terms of time, you've actually lost much more, and you have to redo everything. So taking the time to do things the proper way is really important. And so always design your solutions before jumping inside the code. And there is a great tool to do this. You've already seen a bit about it. It's called event modeling. If you want to read more about this, this website here at the bottom is really great. It explains the basis of this. So just to remind you a bit what this is, in blue, you have the commands. In orange, you have the events. In green, you have the read models. You can see that there are lanes with the UX at the top. Those cogs represent your process managers, so those that are going to handle the side effects. And you can see multiple lanes here. So those are for each of your aggregate/subdomains, depending on how you want to do this. So this is what you're presented with when you go on that website. So I took it from there. And this is what we did. Well, part of what we did. Here you can see that there are multiple flows. What we tried to do is that we tried to make the flow as small as possible, because again, you have a maintenance issue on this. If you start duplicating between your various flows the same behaviors, then once you want to change one of those behaviors that are in between, you have to go inside each of these flows to change everything. So we tried to make the flows as small as possible, and we link them together. It's not really, you cannot really see it easily here, but you see those little gray lines here. They help us link things between the various flows, so that you know that the event maybe that is here is then used up over there to trigger something else, okay? We did a few changes to the event modeling. We are using the UX much less than we ought to be. Well, than it's specified we should be doing. Just because the UX team didn't really grasp didn't really get on board with us with this. They are still reviewing it, obviously, before we start coding anything. But it's up to the engineer to make sure that the ubiquitous language is respected and to present this to the whole team before moving forward, to make sure that everyone is on board and everyone understands where we're going at, where we're going to. Another thing that we changed is the fact that we moved from, well, here you can see commands in their specific lane, so this is kind of historical. But in some places, for instance here, we moved the commands inside the aggregate member lanes. This is to, again, be closer to what we are actually doing and understand where lies the responsibility of handling that specific command. We also have one lane per process manager. So for instance here, again, to understand the whole responsibility that a specific process manager has. Responsibility is quite important to understand. And a last thing that we did, I'm not sure you can see it a lot here, but you can see those little purple squares here. We call those command proxies. Here we have an architecture where we have an aggregate and we have multiple aggregate members, well, a subdomain with multiple aggregate members and an aggregate root. And so we have multiple commands that are triggering the same behavior behind the scenes. And so to do this, well, to show that we are having commands that are triggering other behaviors, or to show that we have a command that is triggering something at a lower level, maybe in an aggregate member that is underneath, well, we have those little command proxies there. Quite helpful to understand the link between those modelization and the code behind the scene. If you want to go more into details about this, again, you can check that website that I linked earlier. We can talk about it outside of this meeting also. But let's get back to the journey we are having yet. We did a lot of mistakes, of course. So here are 3 of these that are still there, still bugging us, that we're working on as we're advancing. The 2 top ones are kind of linked together. They are linked to the database and to how we expose things. So as we come from a monolithic approach, using MVC, etc., we were trying to mirror everything that we did, like each aggregate had his set of properties. Well, we would add a query inside the subdomain logic to say, okay, this query allows you to query that specific aggregate. Well, we shouldn't have done that, obviously. We should have let each application interested in the subdomain data build their own projections using the events. Because this is really how things should be working with event sourcing. You don't expose everything from your subdomain. You let everyone listen to what they're interested in and build their own projections. The other issue was that, well, from those events, we were rebuilding a relational database. And so, again, well, we had the worst, let's say, of both parts, of both domains. We were building something complicated to query because all our features were trying to do joins between the various tables, etc. So this was giving us a lot of pain in terms of performances. And we should have, well, built the normalized projection specific to each feature. So again, this can come as natural for some of you, but when we started, it wasn't. And well, now we are, let's say, paying the price, but slowly changing everything also at the same time because, well, it's easy to change. And a last issue we had is using a subscribing event processor to build a command-side state. I don't know if you know about subscribing event processors, but those are event processors that are going to apply the state, apply the event as soon as you call the apply inside the aggregate. So it's done synchronously while you're applying your events. So there is no tracking behind this. So if at some point something goes wrong, I don't know, you've mishandled some kind of exception and the database is corrupted, well, you basically don't have a way to recover from that unless doing things kind of manually. And I think that rather than using the subscribing event processors to build a command-side state, we should probably have designed things in a way we could rely on a tracking event processor or actually not need a stored state at all. Maybe make sure that our events contain the data that we need to do what we want it to do. So you may be asking yourselves now, how can you leverage this presentation here to, well, improve your own event source system or create your own event source system? Well, probably cannot answer exactly that question, but what I can do is give you a couple advices from our experience. First, you will not avoid the challenges tied to these technologies. You can read all you want about this. You can go as deep as you want. You will meet challenges. So plan for them, embrace those challenges, and make sure that you're prepared for these. Also make sure for that everyone is on board and understand the various base principles that are around this. That's quite important too. Your product, your design, your engineering team. And if you don't have these, well, your business team that is going to tell you what to do, well, they need to talk the same language as you. That's the ubiquitous language. You need to share that. You need to make them understand this. If at some point they don't, well, maybe it's not a good time to go inside this. Take the time to design your solution. I cannot stress this enough. Like, this is like the most important part here. Before jumping inside the code, do your event modeling. I think like this should account for at least 50% of the effort that is needed in any project, at least 50%. It saves you so much time in the end because you can present this to your whole team and you can make sure that everything is okay. You can validate it with some people that are maybe more experienced than you before jumping inside the code. Because the code, even though it's not hard, mostly thanks to the Axon framework, it's not hard to code. It takes time. You got a lot of data classes to create, of commands, of events. It can be even a bit tedious sometimes. I'm like, okay, I have this new command that I need to create with all the events. Okay, so I put some music on and I'm going to just write that code down. So yeah, if at some point you have a tool to generate this, I don't know if he's still there, but no, I don't see him. But yeah, I'd be glad to have this automatically generated. So yeah, take the time to design your solutions to not have to redo all those commands and events and change the names everywhere because you didn't use the proper wording or what. Build everything while keeping in mind the fact that you will want to tear it down the next day. That's also quite important. That will force you to decouple things the proper way. You should always think about things like, okay, I'm doing this now, but life happens, as we've seen, and at some point you can, well, say, we don't need this anymore, or we did this way, but it's not actually what we wanted. We didn't get the proper brief in the beginning because we were still, I don't know, going after user information, etc. So yeah, build everything like you are going to remove it the next day. You're still going to gain in experience, and if you don't have to tear it down, well, hopefully this is the main case. You will be better. Take the time to properly consider your message serialization. This is something actually a bit of history here. 3 days before we put things inside production, I changed the whole serialization thing because we had some kind of issue in it. And I was like, okay, if I don't change this now, well, things are going to be very hard to change once we have everything in production. And you need to understand that your message serialization needs to be shared between all of the applications that are going to interact with Axon. So that's some part of the code you probably want to put in an external library and that you're always going to put in any project. And that you really made sure that, okay, what I'm writing is what I exactly want. And I can read it from wherever I want. Don't neglect Kotlin. It will improve your maintainability by reducing the code. You are creating a lot of data classes when you're working with Axon, with all those command events and queries. So yeah, Kotlin is actually a huge help. And last but not least, leverage everything Axon has to give. We are really, really happy with Axon Framework, Axon Server, and the Axon X support. So yeah, take the time to leverage everything. We have this Slack channel where I'm always asking a ton of questions. Even if I know the answer, I'm still going to ask the question to make sure that that things are good. And people tend to answer in like the hour. If it's not the hour, half a day after that, I get my answer. So that's about it. Yeah, just who am I? So I'm Laurent Thoulon. I work at Locala. I'm a senior lead engineer there. I like to consider myself a holistic engineer. What I call a holistic engineer is that I take into account the whole system, not only what we are currently working on, the whole system and all the actors that are around it. And I think that's where any developer should be going nowadays. It's really by understanding what is around a project that you are going to be efficient in diving inside the project. So I'm a backend developer mostly and an architect. I've been working mostly with Java, but now much more with Kotlin, more and more with Kotlin. I've been developing marketing-oriented applications since 2011, and I started working, as you saw, with event sourcing and CQRS in 2017. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn or here. This is the QR code to my LinkedIn if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was amazing. And I think you started a fan club over there where I was sitting. Because we're like, Kotlin, we're like, yeah! Event modeling, yeah! Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of event modeling, by the way. And in addition to the website that you mentioned by Adam Dimitruk, who basically came up and put these ideas together, my colleague Ivan and I have a series of blogs on event modeling too on our developer portal, so if you want to learn more about it. We do have time for questions if anybody would like to ask anything. Maybe not anything, but anything from the presentation. Anyone? Ah, yes.
Hi, Rahi. In some point you mentioned about the backup of your services and Axon server. I wondered if you do a regular, like a nightly backup or something, and then do you have any experience with recovering from those, any incident and using those backups?
We didn't have yet to use those backups. I think we did some kind of, the infrastructure team did some kind of test of the backup system, like simulate, crash, and restore everything to make sure that everything was working. We actually have quite a history with backups, and we talked a lot with the Axonic team around this. And we ended up with the solution we currently have by discussing mostly with Bert, who helped us a lot understanding how we did things, and I think we discussed a bit also with Mark on how to really back up the Axon server part. But we didn't have yet to recover from a crash in production. We only did testing outside of production.
Any other questions? I know there were 2 questions asked on the app yesterday, but I think hopefully they were answered. If you still have them, just don't hesitate. Yep. Okay, great.
Yes, thanks for your talk. About the message serialization topic, you said you're creating APIs. Aren't you then creating shared kernels, or am I seeing this wrong?
Sorry, I didn't get everything. Can you put the mic closer?
Oh, sorry.
On the chin.
Yes. About the topic on the message serialization, you said you're creating APIs to between services, or at least that's what I understand about it. Aren't you then creating shared kernels instead of applying anti-corruption layers? Or
we don't have APIs between services. We actually use Axon commands and events to communicate between those services. And this is where message serialization is quite important, because when you work with Axon, you decide, okay, what is going to be my event serializer? What is going to be my message serializer? So message contains events, but also commands and queries. And then you have the general serializer that is also taking into account the whole state part. And so when you configure this on one Axon application, you need to make sure that all your Axon applications that are going to communicate together use the same serialization method, because if you don't, well, you're going to send a command to another Axon server, to an Axon application, Axon framework application, and he's not maybe going to be able to deserialize that message because you don't use the same serialization.
Okay, so you mean it more like gRPC or JSON or that kind of serialization?
Yes, we are using Jackson actually to serialize all our messages, and we kept Xstream for the general serializer.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. I think we're out of time. Yeah. There are 2 other questions on the app that are not answered, so if you don't mind answering those afterwards, that would be great, or just stick around and chat with Laurent. Yeah. Do we have time for a break? Awesome. So we'll do a short break, and we'll see you back in a little bit. And thank you so much, Laurent. And yeah, please help me welcome.
Thank you.